Oh gosh. Got him that time. Oh, that's a good one. Yes, sir. I don't know if that's the same fish. Oh, it's a smallmouth. Look at that. In the fall, there are a lot of different lures that can work, but one of my all-time favorite baits to fish during the fall is a Whopper Plopper. It is a bait that we can cover a ton of water with. It catches a lot of fish and it catches some really big fish. So in this video, I'm gonna talk all about Whopper Plopper fishing in the fall, so stay tuned. It's gonna be a good one. This video is brought to you by Fin Fishing Apparel. Right now for the month of September, so just a few more days, I'm actually running a package deal over at Fin Fishing. You can get a USA made sun shirt like the one you see here, one of the only ones made here in the US, and a duck hat, which is a waterproof, lightweight, very durable hat for a package deal of $64. So it's almost 30% off your total retail price. Right now is a great time to buy, and you really help support the Bass Fishing HQ channel. So I'm gonna leave some links down below in the description. Now, like I said, when it comes to fall time fishing, there are a lot of different baits that will work, but one that every single year it seems like I pick up and have a lot of success on is a Whopper Plopper. And not only just a Whopper Plopper, but I throw topwaters a lot during the fall. And that's for a couple of really big reasons. One of the big reasons is, you know, there are bass, especially up in the northern part of the country where I live, where you will see a pretty dramatic fall feed. As that water temperature really starts to cool, those fish somewhat feed up for the winter time. And it doesn't always happen everywhere, but you will see a lot of times that there is a really good bite where the bass just get very aggressive. And the best thing about a topwater bait like a Whopper Plopper is it is a very good bait at efficiently covering a lot of water. And something that you will notice when it comes to fall time fishing is that there are young of the year shad absolutely everywhere. No matter where you go on the lake, you're gonna see balls of bait. And so really what happens a lot of times is that the bass can be fairly spread out during the fall, especially the first part of fall. When you kind of get later into fall, when those water temperatures really start to drop, you really start to see those fish kind of start to group up. But kind of in that first part of fall, like we are right now, you have a lot of fish that are kind of everywhere. They are in the backs of creeks, they are on the main lake, they're deep, they're shallow, they're a little bit of everywhere. So picking up a bait like a Whopper Plopper is simply a really good way to go out there, cover a ton of water, and get a bite here and a bite there. Now, one of the biggest things that people have issues when it comes to a Whopper Plopper is knowing what size Whopper Plopper to throw, what color, and the equipment. So I really want to talk quickly about understanding your Whopper Ploppers a little bit better. Now, when it comes to the plopper, I like to keep things extremely simple, not just only in the fall, but really throughout the entire year. I like some sort of white or bone color. That's probably the one that I'm going to pick up the most during this time of the year in the fall, when I know that those fish are really fixated on shad. Another one that is really good is simply black. Like, I love a black. Now, there are times where I'm fishing really clear water and it's very sunny conditions, and I feel like in that situation, something that's a little bit more translucent, something the bass can't quite see really well, can actually be the best for you. Now, those are probably the three baits that I pick up the most. Now, some places across the country, for example in the Carolinas, where those fish are eating a lot of blueback herring, it just seems like a chrome can do really well. Also, if you happen to be fishing a lake or a pond or whatever it may be that has a lot of bluegill, and that's the primary forage, something that is a little bit more bluegill colored, something that has a little bit of orange on the throat. Now, I will say that even though I just mentioned about 4 or 5 colors, there are days out there on the water where you can pick up any color Whopper Plopper that you want, throw it out there, and you're going to catch fish. Because the thing about it is that this bait really causes a reaction strike from a fish. A lot of times the fish are just going to come up there and snatch it. They don't really care what the color of the bait looks like. What they do care about a little bit more is the noise that this bait makes. Now, that's probably, to me, the most important aspect of a Whopper Plopper is the noise in the profile of this bait. As you guys know, a lot of these Whopper Ploppers or even like the Berkeley Chopo have a very aggressive noise as they're coming across the water. And I start most of my fishing sessions, or most of the times I go out to a new body of water with the Whopper Plopper. This is the 110 size. This is just kind of like a good medium size that I fish the most. I feel like it gets a lot of bites. And if I feel like if the fish are hitting a Whopper Plopper well, I will catch them on it. Now, there are days out there where you will have fish that come up there, hit the plopper, and they don't get hooked up. Now, one of the biggest things that a lot of guys will do is they will step down in the size of the plopper that they're throwing, which can be really good. And we're going to talk about that here in a moment. But what I've also seen over the years is that sometimes actually stepping up in size, instead of throwing the 110, going up to the 130 or even bigger sizes, that will actually increase your hookup rate. And I don't know exactly what it is, if some of those big fish are just wanting a big meal in the fall, but sometimes going up in size can actually be better than going down in size. Now, sometimes you do have to go down. You know, like I said earlier, there's a lot of shad in the lake that are really small during this time of the year, and sometimes matching the hatch with those shad, going down to like this one, this is a little 75, or actually what is probably one of my favorite Whopper Ploppers, which is the 90. The 90, out of all the different Whopper Ploppers out there on the market, has a very unique sound to it. Most of them are very aggressive. The 90 is a lot more subtle of a plopper. And I've seen a lot of days out there on the water where they will not hit a 110, a 130, even the 75, because it has a very loud noise, but they will hit the 90. It is just a really good subtle bait. It gets a lot of bites from me. So anytime that I'm out there on the water, I'm really trying to figure out the size Whopper Plopper that it seems like more fish are committing to well before I even think about color. Now, once you kind of figure out what size the Whopper Plopper is, the next thing that you can do to really help increase your success out there is simply having the right equipment to throw a plopper. And I've talked about this a lot on this channel and on my other channels before, but you know, when we first started fishing a Whopper Plopper, the bass had never really heard that noise before. They had never really heard that sound, and it just seemed like the fish were extremely aggressive on the bait. And a lot of guys, especially the guys that did really well with Whopper Ploppers early on, were throwing a lot of like flipping sticks with 40 or 50 pound braid and then attaching their Whopper Plopper to it. Now, over the years, sure, you're gonna get on bites every now and then where the bass absolutely clobber that thing, and it doesn't matter what rod that you use. But honestly, I have found that I had the most success when fishing a Whopper Plopper with a rod that has more of a parabolic bending action. I do not like a flipping stick anymore because I feel like I lose a lot of fish when I use a very fast action rod. So what I prefer is a moderate action rod. This is basically like a crankbait rod. You know, this one's a little bit more of a medium heavy to heavy power rod, but again, it has more of that parabolic bending action to it because I'm using a hard bait that has treble hooks. Anytime that I use a hard bait that has treble hooks, whether it is a crankbait, a topwater, a glide bait, I like that parabolic bending action, especially when you are using straight braid, which is what I use with my Whopper Ploppers. I'm gonna use either a 30 or 40 pound straight braid. Now, I also think that the reel is a little bit more important when it comes to the Whopper Plopper during this time of the year because, again, like I talked about, I really like to cover a lot of water with this thing. And so I really like to have a pretty high gear ratio reel. This is an 8.1-to-1 gear ratio reel by ARC. Actually, both of these rod and reel are ARC. And guys, just so you guys know, anytime that you want, you can use the coupon code BFHQ over on ARC's website and get 10% off anything, rods, reels, even their lures. So make sure you guys take advantage of that. But I do think that having a high-speed reel is really important because a lot of times when I'm covering water, my boat is constantly moving. And if you're using something in the 6 range or 7 range, you honestly find yourself really reeling the thing very, very fast. And so having something that is an 8 range just really helps you to be just a little bit more efficient out there on the water. Now that we've talked about the bait itself. We've talked about the rod and the equipment that you need. I really want to talk to you about just a few tips when it comes to fishing the Whopper Plopper, something that you may not hear everyone always talk about, because a lot of times when you see guys fishing this bait, they are casting that bait out and they're simply reeling it across the surface of the water, which, look, again, there are days out there where the bass are super aggressive and they're gonna hit that bait. But I've seen several times in my lifetime where having some sort of twitch or having some sort of stop and go retrieve with a Whopper Plopper can make a big difference on simply the number of bites that you get, which obviously translate into getting more bigger bites. And what I mean by that is, so sometimes when I make a cast with the Whopper Plopper, I'm gonna reel that bait at a steady retrieve, and then all of a sudden, I'm just gonna kill it. And I'm gonna just let it sit for a split second. Or I'm gonna just be reeling it again and I'm just gonna pop my rod, which makes that Whopper Plopper speed up. It makes it spit a little bit more water, and it just at times can cause a reaction strike from a fish. I'll never forget a number of years ago when I really learned this. I was fishing down in North Carolina, and it was the difference between catching fish and not catching fish. If you just went out and casted a Whopper Plopper and reeled it straight back to the boat, you would not get a single bite. But if you sped that up, if you popped it, if you killed it every now and then, you would have fish come up there and like aggressively hit it. So when you're fishing this bait, make sure you impart a little bit of action on the bait. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about are the hooks. You know, the hooks that come on a Whopper Plopper are a pretty thick gauge hook. They are sharp, and it does seem like if you hook into a fish and it gets past the barb of that hook, you're gonna land that fish. I do end up swapping out my hooks for a little bit lighter gauge hook a lot of times. I don't want something that's too light, because again, I am using braid, and braid is gonna put a lot of stress on your hooks. But I do like something that has just a little bit less of a thick wire. I feel like I hook up and I hold up with a lot more fish. So there's a lot of good hook brands out there on the market. I've never really settled on one. You know, I use a Gamakatsu round bend a lot. I've used even the Berkley Fusion 19s a lot. There's a lot of different good hooks. There's some really good BKK, a lot of good owner treble hooks. There's a lot of good treble hooks. So I always suggest having a box of treble hooks with you. Always be willing to swap those things out, even over the course of the day. If you're on a really good Whopper Plopper bite, it is a very good thing to switch it out. Now, the last tip that I want to talk about when it comes to a Whopper Plopper is there is 100% a time and place where you need to put a plopper down in the fall. Because the thing about it is that plopper is very loud, like we've talked about so many times. It is a very aggressive fish. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that the fish won't eat a topwater. What I have seen though, a lot of times in late fall, when that water temperature starts to get into the mid 50s and lower, those fish really transition from hitting a Whopper Plopper to actually committing to a bait like a buzzbait a lot better. A buzzbait can be your best friend in cold water. And I actually did a full video of me out there on the lake fishing a fishing a buzzbait, catching a lot of fish, and I'm gonna leave it linked right here. So if you guys enjoyed this video about the plopper, I think you'll enjoy this one about the buzzbait. It is a great way to catch them in the fall. I will see you guys in the next one.